The doctrine of the covenants. The testimony of Scripture unfolds through covenants, divine arrangements by which God reveals his purpose, his righteousness, and his faithfulness. These covenants are not isolated agreements, but a progressive revelation moving toward fulfillment, completion, and rest. From the beginning, God established his intent in creation. Though the earliest chapters of Genesis do not use the formal term covenant, the structure of relationship is present: life, provision, and fellowship under God's order. Yet with the entrance of sin, the need for a redemptive covenantal framework emerges, one that would not merely address behavior, but restore what was lost. The covenant with Noah reveals preservation. In the aftermath of judgment, God binds himself to creation with a promise secured not by human effort, but by divine commitment. The bow in the clouds stands as a sign that the stability of the world rests in God's faithfulness, not man's consistency. With Abraham, the covenant takes on a more specific form. Promise becomes central, promise of land, seed, and blessing. This covenant is not grounded in Abraham's performance, but in God's oath. Even when Abraham is placed into a deep sleep, the covenant is ratified, demonstrating that its fulfillment depends entirely upon God himself. Here, the pattern is established. Inheritance comes through promise, not law. The covenant at Sinai introduces another dimension. Through Moses, the law is given, a system of commandments, ordinances, and sacrifices. This covenant defines righteousness in terms of obedience, establishes a priesthood, and sets forth blessings and curses. Yet embedded within it is an inherent limitation. It reveals sin, but does not remove it. It governs externally, but cannot transform internally. Its repeated sacrifices testify not to completion, but to continual remembrance. The prophets speak into this tension. They declare the insufficiency of the existing order and announce a coming covenant, one not like the covenant made when Israel came out of Egypt. This new covenant would involve a transformation of the heart, the internalization of God's law, and the full forgiveness of sins. The language shifts from obligation to completion, from remembrance of sin to its removal. In the fullness of time, this promised covenant is established through Christ. At the table, he declares the cup to be the new covenant in his blood. This is not an addition to the previous system, but its fulfillment and conclusion. The sacrificial system finds its end in a single offering. The priesthood finds its fulfillment in one who ministers eternally. The law finds its completion in one who embodies its righteousness. The transition between covenants is not merely theological, but historical. The former order, with its temple, sacrifices, and priesthood, was bound to a specific age and people. Its purpose was preparatory, pointing forward to something greater. As that greater reality is established, the former becomes obsolete, not because it failed in its purpose, but because its purpose was fulfilled. The destruction of the temple stands as a visible testimony to this transition. What was once central to covenantal life is no longer standing, because the reality it anticipated has come. The presence of God is no longer localized. The means of access is no longer mediated through repeated sacrifices. The covenant has reached its intended goal. In this established covenant, the defining characteristic is completeness. Forgiveness is not provisional, but final. Righteousness is not imputed temporarily, but established permanently. There is no ongoing system to maintain standing, no repeated offering to secure acceptance. The work is finished, and the covenant rests on that finished work. Thus, the doctrine of the covenants reveals a movement from promise to fulfillment, from shadow to substance, from repetition to completion. Each covenant serves its role, but all converge in a single decisive act that brings the entire structure to its intended conclusion. In this, the faithfulness of God is fully displayed. What was spoken in promise is realized in fulfillment. What was anticipated through types and shadows is manifested in reality, and what was once partial has now been made complete.